Does anyone remember this kid's show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been between 6 or 7. I never found reference it to anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time, but I don't remember which station. But I do remember that it was on a weird time, like 4 o'clock p.m. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland when I was around 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove was about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of the cave talking like a little girl. Yes, okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I've always was kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls. Real low budget. His head was on an old porcelain baby doll that looked very like an antique that doesn't belong on a body. I don't remember what station this was, as I don't think it was WTSF though. Sorry to re-resurrect this old Fred, but I do know exactly what show you mean. Sky Shale. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 1971, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was channel 58. Wherever the station was, my mama let me watch it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself being friends with pirates. The pirate ship that was called the Laughing Stock, and the pirate Percy wasn't a really good pirate because he got too scared easily. And there was this calliope music constantly playing. I don't remember the girl's name, Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughing Stock and Channel 58. I remember the show. The bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with the lower jaw submerged, and it looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had an awful Edwin voice and laughed. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked. I remember now too. Do you remember which part of the sky shale you have to go inside? Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That was when the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would always push in on the laughing stock's face with each pause. You have to go inside with his two eyes and ask you, and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. It was just looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that just like a handlebar mustache above really tall narrow teeth. I honestly thought that the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare Fuel. That wasn't the villain. The puppet with the mustache, that was the villain's sidekick. Horace Horrible. He had monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that he meant that he only had one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette. The Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch it back then. Jesus H. Christ. The Skin Taker. What kind of a kid show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen where the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere, on his strings, and just dirty skeleton, wearing that brown top hat and cape, and his eyes were too big for his skull. Oh, almightily. Wasn't his top hat and cloak thrown up already? That was supposed to be children's skin? Yeah, I think so. I remember his mouth wouldn't open and close. His jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the skin taker didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, "To grind your skin." I'm so relieved that the other people remember this horrible show. I used to have this awful memory. A bad dream where had the opening jungle ended and the show faded in from black and all of the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces and they were just screaming. And all the puppets and marionettes have been flailing splashively and just screaming and screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying, like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed a lot when it had it. I don't think it was a dream. I remember that. I remember that it was an episode. No, not that episode. Or not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing there in place, crying and screaming for the whole show. Maybe I'm malfunctioning in memory because of what you said, but I swear to God, I remember seeing what you described and they just screamed. Oh God, yes. The little girl, Janice. I remember seeing her shake and that skin taker screaming through the garshing teeth. His jaws creasing and so wildly that I thought I could come off to his wire hinges. I turned it off, and that was the last time I watched it. I ran to tell my brother, and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little, and in the early 70s, when I was about 8 or 9, she remembered a kids show called Cove. She said that she was surprised that I could remember that, and I asked her why. And she said, "Because I used to think it was so strange that you said that I'm going to watch Cove now, Mom. And when you did tune the TV to static and just watched dead air for 30 minutes, you had a big imagination with your little pirate show." And that, my little pretties, was Cove, a creepypasta written by Kris Straub. Oh boy, Cove. This is a classic creepypasta that I've seen a lot of people actually sat there and narrate. Like, I remember hearing Dave the Useless narrate this story along with, people like Let's Read, Mr. Creepypasta. Dave the Useless, I remember he narrated it. But I remember a lot of people actually narrated this story, Cove. I mean, this story was pretty good for what it is. I mean, it's a classic creepypasta. Like, I kind of do have maybe one or two complaints that I would have to say. They're not major, but I want to make a mention of them. But before I do that, I'm going to get on with what my thoughts on this story. Well, it's a good classic creepypasta. This is actually one of the fewer lost episode creepypastas that didn't sit there and, have a bunch of cliches thrown in just for the sake of throwing it in there and etc. Because, with all due sincerity, I mean, finding good creepypastas nowadays are extremely hard to find. Like, you basically have to sit there and, go through every single page of the goddamn internet to see if you could find something good. Well, I mean, sadly they don't make stories like these anymore. Well, I mean, people kind of do nowadays, but not really. There's ever rarely a good creepypasta out there. But this story, for whatever reason, I'm not gonna lie, fantastic, and it's a pretty original pasta. Basically, this is basically almost like a diary format. Not really a diary format, no, but basically this kind of, states, certain subjects about, Cove. I didn't read the, the bolded parts, but yeah, if you read the story, you would kind of, see what I'm talking about. I mean, I liked this story back when it was popular. It's still a good popular story today. Although I do have a few like complaints. Not major, but just some things I want to, point out that I really think that need to be pointed out. But before I get that, I've been kind of debating on whenever I should, narrate this story because I know a lot of people actually narrated this story. Like I know bunch of if you guys have been in the creepypasta community for as long as, Shadow has or anything like that, you should know that there's a story called Candle Cove. And I mean, I've seen it personally before, and I actually have, taken a look at this story. And I mean, it's not a bad story, it's a pretty good one. I mean, grammar's pretty good for what it is. But there is one complaint that I would have to say though. I get this is an older story. Maybe the author didn't know about this at the time or something but there were there were lowercase i's in this story. Like it just kind of shows that you're lazy if you're sitting there and you're putting, lowercase i's in the story. I mean, I can understand maybe the author's grammar is not the best or something. Maybe they're not that great at grammar. I could let that slide. But I just found maybe for the author's future reference for when he or she decide, mostly a he. Sorry if I miss gender people because I know I don't do this to be mean or anything like that, but I would have to sit here and say I'm going to be 100% honest. I mean, there were lowercase i's in the story. Like, I mean, not really. I mean, most of the i's were uppercased. It's just there were a couple times where the i's were lowercased, at certain parts of the story. So I just kind of want to make a mention of that so the author knows what the mistake I did find out and point out. So then the author can fix it in the near future. Sure. I mean, that's just for the future reference. Friends, if they are making more stories, it's not it's not. I'm gonna definitely say right here is that make sure all your eyes are uppercased, so then that way it doesn't make people think you're lazy or anything. Cause oh boy, I used to put a bunch of lowercase i's when I wrote stories. Oh my goodness. But like I'm gonna say, if you put this story through Google Docs too, Google Docs can actually fix, that. It's not really a big issue to do, just uppercase the I and then you're good. It's not really a major big flaw with this story, but I just want to kind of mention it so the author understands, the flaws of, the one flaw I did notice in the story, just for the future reference. Okay, other than that, the grammar was good. Same with the sentence structuring, and I do like how this is laid out. I mean, I haven't read this story in a long time. I didn't narrate this story back in 2019. I didn't even think about narrating this story. I did hear narrations of this story, but I wasn't really that interested in the story back then. But now for some reason, I kind of really do like how it was, laid out. Like it's not cliched all over the place. It's not, it's not cliched or anything. It's basically the author, explain what the show is. I mean, not a lot of creepypastas, do that nowadays, especially lost episode pastas. I mean, I know some creepypastas do something like this, but not a lot of lost episodes really do this anymore. I mean, it kind of sucks, I'm not gonna lie, but still, I still find this story to be fantastic. It's a fantastic story, and I did find this on Spin Pasta, so I recommend you guys go check it out on Spin Pasta if you haven't. Now, with that being said, I'm going to say just my personal opinion. This is my opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas, and this is simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this story would have to be I'm gonna give this one a 9.5 out of 10. 9.5 out of 10 because of how beautifully well written this story is. It's beautifully well done. A great classic creepypasta for what it is. The only thing I would have to say was the lowercase i's that I did spot, a couple parts of the story. They need to be fixed, but that's not a big issue. But other than that, fantastic story. Love the concept of it. And it's not cliched, not like most Lost episode pastas. And that the fact that this is actually one of the fewer Lost episode creepypastas that are actually pretty good. So, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what would you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you're new to my channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell to when I upload so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, I'll see you in the next upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.